Welcome to Costa with me, Costa Mwansa. Now, obviously, the last couple of weeks has seen us take a break, enjoying the Africa Cup of Nations all the way from Cote d'Ivoire. Depending on who you're supporting, the finals are on next week, Sunday, the 11th of February. Tonight, we discuss the USAID. Now, the objective of USAID has been to support its partners to become self-reliant and capable of leading their own development journeys. The organization makes progress towards this by reducing the reach of conflict, preventing the spread of pandemic diseases, and counteracting the drivers of violence, instability, transnational crime, and other security threats. It promotes American prosperity through investments that expand American prosperity through investments that expand markets for U.S. exports, creating a level playing field for U.S. businesses, and obviously supporting more stable and resilient and democratic societies. They stand with people when disaster strikes or crisis emerges as the world leaders in humanitarian assistance. My guest this evening is the Mission Director for Zambia under the USAID, Mr. Peter Wiebler. Let's take a break. I'll be welcoming my guest right after this. Thank you for joining us across the entire region. We are on DSTV channel 271, GOTV is channel 20. Of course, online, we are on Diamond TV Zambia across all our online platforms. We're discussing the USAID and its partnerships across various sectors of the Zambian economy, as well as governance, health, and education. Mission Director for USAID in Zambia, Mr. Peter Wiebler, is my guest. Peter, welcome and good evening.
Thank you. Evening, Costa. Thank you for having me.
Great. I'm sure you've been following the Cup of Nations in Africa, big on football. We are as a continent. Who's your support been on?
You know, it was on Zambia. There's only one right answer for that one, Costa. So It was on Zambia. So, next time, let's say. But I don't have a favorite beyond that. I'm actually a tennis player myself. So
you were enjoying the Australian Open?
I was absolutely enjoying it. What a fantastic, I think I want to see some Zambian players. I want to see some more African players on the ATP Tour.
Great. We're looking forward also to the US Open.
Yep. In September. It's a great, we got a lot of tennis before that, though. Wimbledon, the French Open.
Let's get to give our viewers an understanding, really, how long, the US and Zambia partnership through USAID has, been in existence, and just giving an overview of what the USAID is all about.
Sure. So USAID is the United States Agency for International Development. We are a U.S. government agency, the U.S. government's primary development agency, charged, as you were mentioning in your intro, with helping our partner nations and partner countries respond to disasters, but also helping them to advance their own development agenda. So USAID works in over 100 countries throughout the world. We've been in Zambia for decades, establishing partnerships with the Zambian government, with the private sector, civil society, most importantly with the Zambian people, and focusing on development priorities that can help Zambians live better lives, grow their own prosperity, have more of a say in the decisions that matter for Zambians at the community level, at the national level, by strengthening their democratic governance and working on the foundations of development, education, wash and sanitation, health. So major investments, investments from the American people to the Zambian people, because we share values, the strong values about freedom, about the need for stability, about the need for economic opportunity for all people. And so I think USAID is one of the major ways that the American people can represent those values here in Zambia.
Now, Peter, the global geodynamics have shifted quite a lot in the recent past. When you go into history, obviously after the Second World War, you have obviously traditional international bodies, the World Bank, the IMF, the UN, and so on. This seems to shift in terms of now, regional and global groupings. You've got the BRICS, you've got FOCAC, and so on. And for Africa in particular, there's a lot of skepticism, a lot of speculation around, such partnerships and aid and who really means well, for Africa. How does the USAID position themselves amidst all this, shift in the geopolitics?
I mean, it's a great question. I think there may be a shift in some people's perception, and certainly there are new developments, right, with the BRICS expanding and things like that. I think the United States has been here. Let's talk about Zambia. We've been here for decades, since essentially independence of the country, trying to help on economic development issues, trying to raise living standards and create opportunities for ordinary Zambians. And then in public health crises such as the HIV/AIDS epidemic, which began about 30 years ago now, and over 20 years of the PEPFAR program, which I think is widely known, a major U.S. government effort, emergency plan to combat the HIV epidemic, not just here in Zambia, but also all across Africa and around the world. We have been partnering here. We have been on the ground. That partnership began decades ago. It continues today. So I think our point would be we are fair weather. No, we are not fair weather friends. We are all weather friends. And we are continuously trying to find ways and opportunities to expand our partnership with the Zambian people through the government, but also through civil society and other ways. We're trying now to help Zambia seize the special moment that we think is here over the last couple of years. The country's been through some tough times, right, with debt default and others. In 2021, we had a moment of, an incredible moment which opened up an incredible opportunity, we think, for Zambia. You had peaceful elections, you had a peaceful transition of power, and you had signals, not just from the United States, but from the European Union, from the World Bank, the others, the IMF, that Zambia had a moment to stabilize the economy and then really move forward to transform the economy here to touch the lives of all people. So we're trying to help that democratic moment deliver. So what we talk about here quite frequently in Zambia is how can we help democracy deliver for the Zambian people, right, in terms of improved services from the health system, from education, from the rest of the government as well, but also in terms of opening up opportunity on the economy.
So would you say really and justify that such partnerships, such as those of USAID and the Zambian government, is mutually, beneficial? And skeptics reading a couple of writings about either Dambisa's dead aid or why Africa continues to be poor by Greg Mills and so on.
Yep.
The championing of the sovereignty of many of the African economies, safeguarding of their mineral wealth. Would you say that there's mutual benefits for such relationships?
There are absolutely mutual benefits. I think the ultimate goal, as you mentioned in your intro, is that from the United States point of view, is we do not want countries to be dependent on aid, because that reflects a challenge for the United States, because we can't do everything in the world, and we recognize that, right? There simply isn't enough assistance funding in the U.S. budget to do everything everywhere, right? So we want countries to become more self-reliant. We want Zambia to become successful. We want to support the government's vision of trade, not aid, right? There are challenges in the way of, between where we are now and getting to that vision, right? We need to see the policy environment here for businesses and for investment change, and hopefully change fast, so that it's easier to open up a business, but also to grow a business. So it's investors have more confidence when they're looking at coming into, for example, Zambia's IT space, right? Or its digital infrastructure, or telecom, telecoms or whatever the sector might be, that investors have more confidence. So they're saying, actually, Zambia is the place we want to go. So I think our goals are mutual, our interests are mutual, in that we want Zambia to be a successful, stable trading partner for all Zambia's partners, right? So it's not just about, okay, U.S. has to be the only sole exclusive partner. That's not U.S. policy at all. We want Zambia to be a democratic space that is creating economic opportunity for all of its people, not just the ones in Lusaka or in the Copper Belt, but throughout the entire country.
So with that, when you talk about U.S. policy, for a long time, even the Senate in America has been trying to shift its foreign policy, that the U.S. is no longer perceived the super cop or the police of the world, getting into policing everybody on human rights, on how to run democracy and so on. How would you describe the current international relations policy of the United States and through what the USAID is doing?
Sure. Well, I can talk about what we're trying to do in democracy and governance here in Zambia, which is we're trying to deepen and strengthen governance institutions here, like our partnerships with ZRA on domestic resource mobilization, like our partnerships with the Ministry of Finance and National Planning, where we're working deeply and have worked for years on trying to improve public financial management, transparency and accountability in managing public finances. We can talk more about the details of that. We also support civil society here, right, which is the way that citizens can get involved in governmental processes, and citizens can get more involved in decisions that mean something to them, right, that affect their lives. And I think that's one of the core messages I would put forward in this discussion tonight with you, Costa, is that, we might talk about what the government can do, right? We might talk about, okay, where they could do more, where they could improve. But in a democratic system like the United States and others, citizens have not just rights, but they have responsibilities, right? Civil society organizations have roles to play. The private sector has a big role to play and a big voice, right? And saying, okay, this is what we need in order to succeed. So I think it's logical for us. We do it. I hear it with Americans all the time. It's like, the government should do this, right? The government should solve this problem. I hear it in Zambia also. But it's not the only solution. So there are kind of perspectives on all sides on how to solve the country's problems and how to move the country forward. That is actually what we're trying to support through our democracy and governance programming, through support for independent media in the country to help give voice to people who don't have a voice, support for civil society, support for elections processes, right, to make sure they're free and fair. So you may have heard, but there's an election coming up in 2026. So we're working now to try to make sure that is as free and fair as possibly can be.
Great. Let's zero in onto just highlighting, for the sake of our viewers this evening, what have been some of the most significant achievements of the mission in Zambia for the USAID.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do now is focus on future achievements in the economy and in governance, because that's what's going to ultimately transform the country, and that's what's going to unlock the enormous potential that this country has. I think in the past, what we can point to that's been some of the most successful things that USAID and the U.S. government have done is, trying to get us closer to controlling the HIV epidemic, right? So PEPFAR, the U.S. government plan, has for HIV control, has been active for 20 years, invested billions of dollars here in Zambia. We're very close with our Zambian partners to getting to epidemic control. That's a tremendous accomplishment, right? We're not there yet. There's still work to be done, but that's a tremendous accomplishment. On malaria, USAID has been also investing for years. This is such a deadly disease, although it's growing less deadly, but it takes such a terrible toll on the economy, right? So maybe it's not such a common thing for folks here in Lusaka, but for other parts of the country, as you know, if your child gets sick with malaria, that child's out of school. That affects how they learn and what kind of profession that they can grow into and what kind of opportunities are out there for them in the future. It affects employees of businesses, whether it's sugar factories up in Mwansa, where we have partners, or just ordinary folks, farmers working the land. It takes a tremendous economic cost to the economy. So the more we can work together with our Zambian partners, including the private sector, to tamp down those costs, keep people healthy, and not let them get sick in the first place, that is a huge thing. In places where USAID has worked on malaria, in the provinces where we've been working over the past years through the President's Malaria Initiative, we've been able to tamp down and curb malaria deaths by, I think, 60%, right, since 2014. That is huge. That's over half of the cases that used to happen and used to end in people passing. That's not happening anymore. That's thanks to the American taxpayer and the American support. Those are just a couple of examples. I could go on in the health sphere.
So within the health aspect, what have been some of these challenges?
So first of all, I think as you know, we don't have enough control over, like COVID took the entire planet by surprise, including the United States. So COVID was something that we definitely had some development impacts in terms of what we call backsliding, right? And it hurt the development agenda, not just here in Zambia, but also everywhere around the world, because kids didn't go to school, so education suffered. People lost jobs, so the economy suffered, et cetera, et cetera. You know the story better than I. So I think outbreaks like COVID are something that we see. COVID and let's say pandemics like that probably won't end with COVID, right? I think the scientists and experts all around the world say there can be more, right, of different types. So we have to recognize that fact, and the United States is investing in Zambia and other areas in what we call global health security, which is working with our Zambian partners like ZNPHI, like Ministry of Game and Fish and Wildlife, and working on the zoonotic side, on the animal protections, to make sure we can detect outbreaks faster, that we can control them sooner, and that we can communicate and help kind of limit the spread. So we're working on the global health security agenda as a direct response to the experience we had with COVID before. On issues like, for example, cholera, something we're looking at right now, and working in partnership with our Zambian counterparts on. I think one thing that's become clear is that we need to take action faster. Donors can mobilize quickly, but we have to work hand in hand with communities that are being impacted, right? So there has to be a lot of communication back and forth. There has to be a lot of coordination between Ministry of Health, other affected ministries, water, sanitation, right? Underlying the cholera response, there's some key messages about how a government can identify a problem and then respond to it.
Still on health, what's the futuristic focus in terms of how USAID, WHO, the UN, how are you looking at the issues of global health, security? COVID, for example, came with a lot of issues arising on the safety of vaccines, the efficacy, and so on. Not only for Zambia, but even in the US and across the world, there was finger pointing in terms of who was to blame, and it has a spillover. Even when you look at the uptake of cholera vaccines, for example, just people have these concerns of not really trusting whether it's a scheme to wipe out a certain population or the safety. So what is the futuristic focus in terms of how USAID is approaching global health security, but just safeguarding the human race in terms of how to face such pandemics in the future? Yeah, that's a big question, Costa. I think the futuristic response is maybe one that we have been echoing in the development community, but also in the health community, which is, I think we should look at data, right? We believe that vaccines do work, right? Certainly the vaccines that were produced during COVID had enormous efficacy. There are questions out there. There is misinformation. We can
we need to work better to counter that misinformation. I think some of that misinformation is coming with perhaps some ill intentions, right? You know, some of it is simply the noisy, cacophonous information environment we're working in, but other parts of it may have some darker agendas behind it, in the sense of, you know, folks wanting to see destabilization or distrust of health authorities. The data tells us that the vaccines for COVID worked. They had enormous effect all around the world, including here in Zambia. So it would be a genuine problem if we were to see backsliding and kind of an erosion of trust in that. Because, as you know, there are vaccines for cholera out there. There's a vaccine for malaria, which has got tremendous promise if we can get the costs down and get the supplies out for the continent of Africa and other places that are impacted. And there are vaccines for all sorts of diseases that we'd made tremendous great gains before COVID in battling different public health problems. So it would be a real, genuine setback if we were to see that mistrust in the vaccine situation, the complex of vaccines around the world, sort of take down the level of participation, right, and erode public confidence, whether it's in Zambia or the United States. And we're having that debate in the United States, by the way. So that's one point. I think on the other question, we all need to find ways, you know, again, the assumption is that there will be other types of pandemics, or there will be other challenges like COVID that can come out that could be even more dangerous, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about the current, you know, cholera, you know, epidemic. One of its worst and biggest for Zambia in the recent past. I was just looking at figures, you know, this morning. We're quickly passing the 600, you know, mark in terms of deaths and so on. It's disrupted the education cycle. We've now moved the opening of schools to 12th, you know, February now. The ministry is worried that Lusaka was the epicenter, but we're getting pockets of these cases spreading, especially, you know, to the Copperbelt. How would you describe your partnership and interventions in the cholera space?
So I think we have surged on cholera with our friends and partners in the government, but also in the communities where we're working in Central Province and Copperbelt, and now soon to be we're going to be providing additional commodities here in Lusaka, since that's where the real epicenter has been. Our ambassador, Ambassador Gonzalez, was out in public at a major event last week with the Minister of Water and Posha, and then also with senior officials from the Ministry of Health, emphasizing the partnership. And that, you know, I believe his quote was that partnership is not simply about getting in front of the cameras and then talking about, you know, what an amazing donation we're making on this day. Partnership is about what goes on behind the scenes every day, right, over years and even decades. And that's where we've been with our Zambian allies and colleague, and that's where we'll continue to be. So I think, you know, in terms of the response, hopefully this we can learn from it. I think that's another action point, something we've started to discuss with our Zambian colleagues about, you know, where did the system work this time, or where has it worked thus far, and where can we do better, all of us collectively.
Talking about system inefficiencies, truth be told, I mean, you are partners, so some of these things are not really your problem. Are you satisfied with what we're doing as a nation, as a government, looking back into the past, when we look at your health care support towards HIV and malaria and all these things, there were concerns, for example, in terms of mismanagement of some of these funds, the famous, you know, $1 million global fund and all this. Are we plugging the leaks in terms of efficiencies and accountability within the healthcare support?
Right. That's a great question. I think the ultimate question is, I would take it up a notch and say, you know, where are we trying to go, and where are we going? Where are we trying to reach with our Zambian partners. We're trying to get to a system that is in Zambia that's providing the level of services that is appropriate, right? That Zambians need, whether it's here in Lusaka or out in Western or up in Northern, right? So that if somebody gets sick, they go and we have confidence that they're going to get the treatment, the advice, the response that they need from the healthcare provider, whether that's a public provider or a private provider. I think we have had, we're making, as a U.S. government, we're making significant investments in terms of buying antiretroviral drugs in the HIV front, similar large procurements on anti-malarials, right? So those are donations from the Global Fund, but also from USAID, and so we have an interest in making sure that those commodity supply chains are secure, and we're working in partnership with our government counterparts to do that, and that's a work in progress, right? We'll continue to do that because the objective is so important and because the investments are so large. I think in terms of the specific question on cholera, are we satisfied? I think we need to do the after action with our partners and say, where did the system work, and where can we do better? What about the international response? And it's not just the United States; it's also many others, including the UN system,
the EU,
right? So many friends of Zambia. And then where could the Zambia's response have been better? I have seen that obviously His Excellency has been named the cholera champion for SADC, and then Minister Masebo has been out speaking very publicly about the need to improve in terms of personal hygiene, but also in terms of stuff.
But are you satisfied and happy with systems put around issues of accountability? Because this has been a thorny issue, especially regards our health system, procurement, and when support comes, pilferage of these drugs, but also just within, I know we'll talk about the electronic procurement system and the help you're giving, but issues of funds missing and just the whole aspect around whether it's medicines and so on. As a partner, are you satisfied with plugging these, with the accountability measures towards plugging these leaks?
I think there's always work that can be done, and I think if you look all across Africa, if you're looking at places where the United States or other donors have been making significant investments in commodities, I think there have been challenges all around the continent and also in other parts of the world. So it's not only an African problem. I think we're making progress. Certainly, we have very, very constructive conversations with our friends, and we are working to strengthen the supply chain here in Zambia because it's so important to saving people's lives, right? And we are also working on ways to create greater accountability and transparency in the system so that we can track those commodities and the life-saving drugs that we are procuring and are providing to the Zambians, so that we can make sure that we have visibility on them from the day they enter the country to the day they get to the last mile, right? So we're working with them, and we've gotten some good reactions and good response from our Zambian counterparts, and I hope that will only improve in the future.
Let's move from health to now a very biting issue on the Zambian economy. We are all aware as citizens that we're in a huge debt crisis. The cost of living is not anything that is satisfactory. Just last week we saw the price per litre of petrol going to 34 kwacha. Our forex exchange rate is not looking too good. So we are stuck at debt negotiations. The president was engaging, the foreign missions last week, and he's been making this promise that we're at the cusp of getting a deal. We're at the cusp of getting, a deal. How is USAID supporting the Zambian government around these areas? Because Zambians are anxious.
Yeah, no, I feel it and I see it, and I know that the kwacha situation is troubling to almost everyone in this country, and I know that people are concerned. We hear it. We hear it at the embassy all the time from our embassy colleagues. And then when I go out and I meet with people like you, but also with, I would say, no offense, but more ordinary Zambians outside of Lusaka, then
we are the ordinary.
I hear it quite a bit. So there's no question that there's concern, and I know that we know that the Zambian government has been working hard to address the debt issue. USAID specifically has been working to support the IMF agreement here, which was key to stabilizing the discussions. We can talk about debt in a moment, but USAID isn't necessarily directly involved in the debt negotiations, as you know. What we are involved in is working to support some of the elements of the IMF framework agreement that has helped to stabilize the economy here. We've done that through supporting key benchmarks like the development and passage of an access to information law. So our partners through our USAID Open Spaces program helped to facilitate that law. The final result may not be perfect, but it represents progress, and it is an important benchmark under the International Monetary Fund agreement. We have helped stand up and build the capacity of the debt management unit in the Ministry of Finance. We've helped to develop and design the new operating model for the ZRA so that it can actually have the capacity to better collect revenues, better target sectors of the economy to identify where there is compliance on the tax, domestic resource mobilization front, and where additional revenue could be brought in from, let's say, certain economic sectors that may not be paying their share.
Let's get to break these things down a little bit more deeper. Peter, Zambia's debt situation is complex because you've got private bond holders with Eurobond, official creditors, multilateral, and so on. Where, in your opinion, is the sticky point? I mean, we've been at this for a very long time.
Yeah.
We had the IMF, Director Kristalina Georgieva visiting and announcing, whether it's here or it's in Doha, this famous $1.3 billion bailout, the tranches of what. Where, in your perspective, are we stuck? What is the bottleneck? Where's the holding point?
Costa, I think that's a better question for your colleagues and elected officials in either State House or in the ministry. I know they've been working very hard to do that. As you know, in the U.S. government, the Department of Treasury is one that's responsible on debt. I can't possibly speak on that. I do know that this is something that I think all Zambians want to see some resolution on the debt issue very fast.
Maybe then the question to you is, as the U.S. government, you've been supporting Zambia in meeting some of these objectives of the IMF program. But for the citizenry, I know there's been debates on two sides of the coin. Do we need an IMF program? Is it good or bad for us? Or we've heard debates of the IMF of then is a different IMF, of now.
Yeah.
But when you look at all the economic variables, what are you as partners whispering into our government? There's a feeling you're telling them, kill the citizens, tax them more, increase the price of fuel, remove subsidies, and all these things we're being told that to satisfy an IMF deal. What advice and support? Small businesses feel hurt, the ordinary citizens feels they're being chalked. Is this what the IMF deal is all about? Is to kill the small person?
I certainly can't speak for the IMF, and we're not whispering anything. We have very open communications with our colleagues in the government. I think, if I remember correctly, one of the first things that I heard when I got here in 2002 was His Excellency President Hichilema speaking and unveiling the 8th National Development Plan in Mulungushi and saying, this is our IMF plan. right? This is not the IMF's plan that they're imposing on us, but this is the Zambian plan. So I think, there's a question about, if there's a question about accountability there, I think, he answered that question, that this was a Zambian plan and that it wasn't being simply kind of given to the Zambian people. I think the Zambian government has done very, very commendable work in sustaining investments in core sectors like education in the 2024 budget, in health, right? We had a modest increase in the health budget for 2024, while at the same time meeting some of the conditions of the IMF agreement. So I do think the IMF has learned from some of the earlier experiences that they had with programs in Africa and elsewhere that did impose what they called austerity measures. And I think I know in the discussions that I've heard or seen in the media that there's an attempt to introduce a kind of different system of different kinds of reforms in the system, right, that I just mentioned, like access to information, which was a requirement under the agreement, reforms of FISIP. Right?
Why would the ATI, for example, be such an important component towards achieving the IMF program?
Right, because, again, it's the IMF's program, so that you should ask them that. But they included it as a benchmark in terms of, I think, assessing and seeing if the government would be willing to take on additional reform measures that promoted transparency, accountability in government. So to help the government be more accountable to the people.
And in any case, is it working anyway?
It just passed, so I think it's now about implementation.
Let's talk about this support still around the IMF issues, the Zambia Revenue Authority and the Ministry of Finance. You talk about improved revenue generation. Again, another highly debatable and bitter pill to swallow for businesses and citizens. 125 billion kwacha is the target for ZRA's collection. This year they're trying to introduce the smart, invoicing system. You've spoken about the EPP or the EPG system. But then the debate has been, how do you intend to collect more taxes from an already bleeding economy? And look at our GDP projections. Small businesses are not growing, so you're killing the same people that you want to tax from. Is this a kind of advice or support? Where do we get the balancing act?
Yeah, well, certainly USAID is not, we're not out there collecting taxes, right?
Definitely
so we're partnering with the Zambian government across a range of fields. Why is domestic resource mobilization important? It's because governments, as you know, only have a couple of different ways to raise money, right? One of them is taxes, right? Another is by selling things, and then a third is by going on the markets, right, and borrowing. So and the borrowing problem here has been pretty well established, right, in terms of debt. The main way that most governments around the world are financed is through tax payments, right, from citizens, corporations, and others. So it's an issue around the world. We have it in the United States, right? And so there's two sides to it. There's the compliance side in terms of governments saying, okay, you're a citizen of this country or you're a legal entity, you have to pay some taxes. There's another side, which is that citizens need to have some kind of confidence in their government that the money that they're paying, that every kwacha is going to the purpose that it was intended, that the government says it's going to. That's that confidence, that's the accountability, that's the transparency that all citizens in a democracy deserve from their government. And I think that's also what USAID is trying to improve.
But within the support, Peter, I think the crux of the matter for our economy for a long time has been how to effectively and optimally get the right tax mix, especially for high-earning industries. And I'm talking about the mining sector, for example. There's huge leakages. I mean, we are endowed with so many minerals, sugilite now, manganese, cobalt, gold, and so on. And yet we formalize these taxing systems on small domestic businesses. And this is where we cry that, look, the mining giants are getting away with these tax breaks and these tax incentives. Are you working in that area to support that? Everybody believes that if we get the taxation mix right within mining, we will be high flying.
I think I would partially agree with that. So first of all, that is part of the work we're doing with ZRA, is to try to rationalize and change its operating model so that they have more capacity to identify additional sources of revenue, right, and to go get them, right, and to collect those sources, including mining. And that's been a stated priority from the minister in his budget speech, as well as in some of the budget symposia that we've done. Second point, Costa, is it's not just about collecting more or squeezing the lemon harder and getting more juice out of it. It's about having a bigger lemon, right, and making sure that, or lots and lots of lemons. So the economy needs to grow, right, and that's where the business enabling environment comes from. We want to see, and we want to work with, and we are working with the government on trying to improve the enabling environment for business. We also want to make sure that the investment climate for Zambia is something that investors have confidence in, right? We hear often that Zambia is open for business, but what the investors may still have some questions, right? And so they want to see a reliable system. They want to have some predictability in the system, but they also want to know that if they come here and invest their hard-made funds, that they're going to be pretty much guaranteed of a return, right? Not guaranteed in the sense of zero risk, but they want to be able to minimize the risk to the maximum extent possible.
Talking about predictability for investment, is it something of concern for you as a partner? 2 years ago, I moderated at a mining indem, and one of the concerns were that we were flip-flopping in terms of inconsistency around our taxation changes within the mining sector. Even as a peaceful country, countries like DRC that are in some parts war-torn were doing much better than us in terms of revenue and just mining production. Are we moving towards investment-friendly policies that are predictable and are sustainable?
I hope so. I think we're about to have a major test of that later this week. We're having a Libido Investment Forum, which is being co-hosted by the government of Zambia as well as by the United States and others, to try to attract and major investments into this Libido corridor, which has been discussed often. So I think that's going to be an excellent opportunity for major league investors, big-time investors here, who are coming to Zambia to look for opportunities in the Libido corridor, to say, here's what we're worried about, or here's what we would like to see. So I hope that our Zambian counterparts will be there and will be listening, because we all have an interest in seeing Zambia's economy grow, and grow in the right way, right, according to the right standards, transparently, minimizing risks of corruption or of leakage, as you say. So I think that's something that we all agree we want to see.
Still on the issue around investment, you've touched on a number of factors that influence investment, policy stability, democratic space, transparency and corruption.
Yeah.
You've heard, especially last year, concerns, and I know you're working with civil society, others saying Zambia's democratic space is shrinking, despite the ATI. We need to give it room to breathe. I know you want to respect Zambia's sovereignty and independence, so you play diplomacy, but
I don't play it. I do it.
You practice diplomacy. What do you take of the civil space and the interaction you're having? We've been grappling at the Public Order Act. There's issues to do with judicial and legal reforms. Are we progressing insofar as our democracy and civil space? Just last week, we had a notch higher in terms of the corruption perception index. Yeah. Is this something that is elating you as partners?
That's interesting, isn't it? So the corruption perceptions index is literally how do people see the corruption problem trending in Zambia. And as you saw, and as you refer to, the actual perceptions seem to be that corruption is declining, or that this government is doing better in the fight against corruption. That's interesting. There has to be some data behind that, and some reason why people are feeling that way, because that's not expert opinion. That's, like, again, ordinary Zambian opinion. So I think that's meaningful, and I think we need to try to, I think that would be a great thing for journalists such as yourself to dig into, with people saying, where do you think that's coming from, right? So I think that's an interesting perspective, just in terms of, the broader issue. So the current administration campaigned on a democratic platform, right? And so there were a lot of promises made about fighting corruption, but also about protecting democratic space, expanding democratic freedoms.
Are we seeing that?
We want to. I mean, I think ATI, access to information, is something that is again not perfect, but I think that's a step in the right direction.
Public Order Act.
We wait and see. We're going to wait and see on Public Order Act. I think we haven't. There hasn't been a draft bill listed yet. When I talked, or released yet, I think when I talk to the young Zambians and they talk about the Public Order Act and they ask, I've heard many people ask me, this was essentially a colonial act, right? So why is it still on the books? I think that's not the U.S. government speaking, that's Zambians speaking, and I think that's where the democratic impulse needs to come from, is the Zambian people, and not from outsiders saying, this is what you should do, right?
So, still along the same lines of participation of citizenry and how they're working with government, whether it's financial issues and taxation, there's also an important aspect that I know the USAID is working in promoting, linkages of gender equality and social inclusion. I mean, young people, women have been poised to be marginalized, and I think when you look at the Constitution, there have been proposals around this. You look at CDF as a development agenda, there's aspects of this. How are you working around the issue of, GESI, that's gender equality and social inclusion, around whether it's financial taxation or even within, citizen participation?
Sure. Why is it important? I think the idea of maximizing gender contributions and women's contributions to the economy, to political life, social life, to having people with disabilities more involved in the economy in all walks of life. It's because Zambia needs every single person to progress and to maximize its development. That's the big picture goal. What we're doing about it is we're actually looking into, for example, through our domestic revenue mobilization programs or our Revenue for Growth program, we're looking at ways that gender might be better included in taxation policies and better reflected. Right? Our current tax policies inadvertently actually disadvantaging women business owners or smallholders? Are they? It's a question, right? So first and foremost, what we're trying to do is understand the situation and how the current system may be either empowering or not certain groups like women, like people with disabilities and others. Why is it really critical for Zambia? Not only because you need every single person for this country to continue to move forward, but because data shows all around the world that countries that empower their minorities, empower both genders, right? And what I mean by that is have the same openings and opportunities for the economy, for political expression and leadership, for social leadership. Those countries develop. Right? If you and I could look at a top 20 list of the most developed economies in the world, almost every single one, if not every single one, would empower women, would empower their minorities. So that's the reason why, in the big picture, we're trying to encourage that type of approach here.
Well, just at the start of the year, last week, the Minister of Finance was addressing, an economic, session, touching on plans of the 2024 national budget. You are interested really in terms of budget support and implementation. For a long time, we're working towards domestic resource mobilization, reducing on the financial support of international cooperating partners on our budget. I think we've come down to less or around 20%, of it. How do you look at our plans with this budget, and how do you intend to interact on this aspect of the national budget to look at support and implementation?
Yeah, so I think we'll continue to partner with our friends in the GRZ, but also with the private sector and others. Why is it important to continue on the budget? This budget was, the 2024 budget was, as I said earlier, impressive because it sustained modest increases in those core development sectors, even within the confines or the parameters of the IMF agreement. That's really impressive, right? Budgets are important over time. So any one particular year is going to be important, but it's not going to tell you the whole story. So we want to see meaningful investments over time. We want to see on the domestic resource mobilization front, we want to see increases. Why? Because that gets us closer to Zambia's goal, which is the trade, not aid. right? Which is a Zambia that's self-reliant and driving its own development agenda and setting out the terms for the Zambia that the government and the people want to see, as opposed to outsiders, right? Any kind of outsider. That's why it's important. I think we're on the right foot. There are some really important aspects up there that are going to face the country going forward in the next few years. One is about health, right?
From an outsider partner perspective, really, where do we get it wrong, and what should we be doing? Because here's a country that has got very good natural resources in terms of water sources, vegetation, tourism potential, a young, human resource, mining endowment. So all the variables look very positive in terms of what the world needs. 8 to 9 countries surrounding us, meaning we're land linked, and the potential trade potential of consumption in terms of demand.
Right.
Where do we get it wrong?
I think I would challenge the premise, Costa. Not sure. I'm not going to go into where Zambia is getting it wrong. I think where can we get it right in the future? One is by I think all Zambians have a stake in Zambia's progress. Right. It's not just about what the government does. It's about people all across the country who can get involved on the democratic side, help solve a problem in the community, but also get involved on the policy discussions, like how do we open up the economy even more? How do we create the business enabling environment that lets all Zambians who have a good idea, including all of those young people out there that I've met who are just incredible and have these great ideas, but the system isn't sort of making it easy for them to go out and find capital, right? Find some people to work with, trained people who can be good teammates and to work with, and then be successful. It's still not easy enough, and the enabling environment needs to be there to actually make it relatively easy to start a business, to have an idea and turn that into a money-making proposition.
Let's quickly, as we come to a close, look at another fundamental area towards development is media. I mean, the fourth estate or the watchdog role, you've played very important partnerships roles there with open spaces and so on. But the media landscape across the world is fast changing. Artificial intelligence, I know, is something that, again, you're discussing. But Zambia has seen issues around the cybersecurity law and cybersecurity space. We're now talking the Children Codes Bill. How is USAID contributing to some of these causes? I mean, we've even talked about the ATI. The media promoting effective, whether it's just financial governance, but transparency, accountability, and playing its role.
So first and foremost, we've been a large supporter. The U.S. government has supported free media all around the world for decades. It's a core value. It's an essential element of being in a democracy, of living in a democracy, is the fourth estate, free media. So here in Zambia, we've been doing the same thing and supporting independent voices for decades. We support a network of independent radio stations that sponsor community debates, provide independent, objective information all across Zambia. So we're strengthening outlets on kind of like a fundamental level to help make sure that information is out there and that people can call in and talk and say, this is what's bothering me in my community. What can we do about it? In an emerging democracy, right? Second is we're working on the legal framework, right, of the set of legislation that affects the media space here, whether it's access to information, which we've talked about quite a bit. We're prepared to support on the cybersecurity amendments, which are obviously critical to freedom of expression and the state's role in governing freedom of expression. So that's a big one. That's a challenge all around the world as we get more and more wired as a world. You're seeing it in the United States.
I saw Congress just last week
AI
putting to task the big tech giants.
Social media, right? Exactly. So it's an issue in Zambia, just like it's an issue in the United States. We're not lecturing anybody on that. But I do think it's something that...
We're just part of the bigger problem.
I don't know if we're part of the problem.
Or the creators of the problem.
We're trying to be part of the solution. and we're working with our partners. You mentioned AI. You know, that's something that, as you saw in Congress and also in Europe, people are starting to really grapple with this challenge. We did some research and we presented it a couple weeks ago. 60% of media outlets like yours and like others, I don't know if Diamond is one of them, but use AI in some way, generating stories, content editing, things like that. 25% of the journalists of the media professionals we surveyed through this work have been trained. So a lot of people are using AI. Not so many people have been trained in the positive sides, but also in some of the downsides.
Very quickly, we just recovering from the hangover of COP28, preparing for COP29. Climate change is a big global issue that is here to stay.
Absolutely.
Global food security is challenged. It's at the verge of obviously being endangered. We've seen on one end floods, droughts in one particular country. How are you looking at working around issues now? You're talking green bonds and climate safety, climate resilience, plans, planting of trees. What space are you playing in as far as climate issues are concerned?
So we have actually quite a bit of work going on, whether it's in a couple of the what we call the protected landscapes arena, where we're working in both Kafue National Park, but also up in North Luangwa, where we're trying to pioneer methods to preserve and work with communities in the game management areas around those national parks to make sure that that basically the onset, let's say, of human habitation isn't going to change and dramatically affect the landscapes there. Those are very specific examples. We have an entire program called Alternatives to Charcoal, which is an attempt by the United States government to help Zambians identify ways that the charcoal can be reduced, because basically the demand for charcoal is driving deforestation in the country. Zambia's forests are one of its primary national assets, right? You talk about the mines, you talk about strategic mineral, but actually it's woodlands in this country that are one of the prime values, and not just to Zambians, but also to the world, right, as we try to wrestle with climate. So carbon sequestration, carbon markets, green bonds, as you're talking about, those are climate finance, trying to pump more finance in investments in the country that are green, renewable energy, others. This country has enormous potential in those spaces. It's about getting from the concept phase into reality of actual shovel-ready investments in solar, wind, different kinds of climate-friendly agriculture, climate-smart agriculture, which is also ways that we're promoting climate change action in Zambia. So we're doing good work across the sphere, across the spectrum. We're trying to see how Zambia can become a leader in space. Zambia was the lead African negotiator in COP, has transitioned that responsibility, but there's still a major opportunity for Zambia to actually be a leader in Africa.
Finally, Peter, how do you as USAID envision this ongoing role and partnership with the Zambian government through your mission towards development, particularly in the context of good governance, public engagement, and I think the main issue now is economic stability and probably economic rescue.
Yeah. So again, we're trying to partner with not just the government, but with the private sector, civil society, which includes academia, churches, etc., but really with communities and people all across the country to help democracy deliver. This is a moment where Zambia's democratic system, emerging democracy, can produce tangible results for the people and help to create that dynamic that encourages belief and trust in government, right? But that also helps government in turn become more responsive to what people are feeling and what they need, right? What the priorities are. I am sure that your listeners, your viewers know that have somebody who's been touched by recent developments, whether it's the economy you talk about, whether it is somebody whose kids are not in school because of the cholera outbreak, right? That the government and all of us need to help to avoid avoid those types of shocks, right? But also to help make sure that this system is producing tangible results for the Zambian people. That's the way we see the partnership. That's the objective we have for the partnership.
Peter Wiebler, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Costa. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
My guest this evening has been the USAID Mission Director for Zambia, Mr. Peter Wiebler. We've been discussing, obviously, the long, existing partnership between the USAID Mission as well as the Zambian government in various, sectors, including, financial management, basically governance, the health sector, the media across board. Thank you for watching. Remember to catch this also on our online spaces. It's Time on TV Zambia on YouTube as well as Facebook. We'll be back on the 18th on Sunday after that Africa Cup final. Good night and have a fantastic evening.
Costa was brought to you by FQM Trident Limited, a subsidiary of First Quantum Minerals Limited.